In 2017, a detective walked out of the Caribbean's most famous police station and did the one thing no lead in that show had ever managed. He survived. No coffin, no disgrace, no scandal, no final episode betrayal. 6 years later, the BBC went back for him, dropped him in a drizzly harbour town, and quietly built one of the strangest hit dramas on British television.
The BBC crime drama Beyond Paradise has returned to our screens for its latest season.
It means more mysteries on the south coast.
A town pretending to be somewhere it isn't. A police station stacked with comedy royalty. A leading man who was odds on for a far bigger job. 10 secrets hiding in plain sight on Friday nights. The detective who got to leave happy. Death in Paradise has a rule its audience learned the hard way. Detectives do not get endings. They get exits. The original lead was murdered in the opening minutes of a series. Others left under a cloud or in a hurry, or with something unresolved hanging over them. St. Marie is a beautiful place to be posted, and a dangerous place to be the man in charge. Detective Inspector Humphrey Goodman broke that pattern. He left for love. He followed Martha Lloyd back to England after 4 series, the first lead in the program's history to walk off the island genuinely happy. What made it land was where he had started. Humphrey was the replacement. He was parachuted in after the death of the original detective, greeted by an audience openly skeptical that the show could survive losing its center. 4 series later, Humphrey was the most beloved lead the island had known, which made his happy exit feel less like a departure than a reward the audience had voted for. For 6 years, that was the end of it. Then the BBC did something the franchise had never done. It went back for a character it had already released. Beyond Paradise picks Humphrey up years down the line, engaged to Martha, leaving London behind and starting again in her hometown in Devon. And the premise is, the original show turned inside out. In the Caribbean, Humphrey was the awkward Englishman baffled by Paradise. In Shipton Abbott, he is the overqualified big city detective baffled by a town where everyone knows his business before he does. It worked for a reason nobody could have engineered. The ending viewers were handed in 2017 was never quite an ending. Millions had spent 6 years quietly wondering whether Humphrey and Martha actually made it. Beyond Paradise was built on the simple, generous decision to answer them. The man answering, though, was supposed to be somewhere else entirely, specifically in a police box. Subscribe before we get into that one, because Secret 2 is the role Kris Marshall was odds on to win and lost anyway. The TARDIS. He never climbed into. Kris Marshall has spent his career as one of the most familiar faces in Britain. In 2017, he came remarkably close to becoming its most famous alien. When Peter Capaldi announced he was leaving Doctor Who, Marshall became the bookmaker's runaway favorite to take over the TARDIS. The press treated it as very nearly settled. Odds shortened, speculation hardened into assumption. And then, it simply did not happen. The role went to Jodie Whittaker, the first woman to play the Doctor, a piece of casting that rewrote the show's history. And Marshall's near miss became a footnote in somebody else's landmark. He had just walked away from Death in Paradise, and the national assumption was that something enormous was coming next. Marshall was Nick, the hapless eldest son in My Family, one of the biggest BBC sitcoms of its era. He was Colin, the hopeful romantic who flies to America, convinced his accent will do the heavy lifting in Love Actually. And for years he was the face of the BT adverts, playing out an entire fictional family life in commercial breaks. There is a pleasing symmetry in what he lost. Doctor Who is the story of a mysterious outsider who arrives in a community, fixes what is broken, and charms everyone despite himself. Marshall has effectively been playing a version of that part for years, just with a notebook instead of a sonic screwdriver, and Devon instead of the universe. Given a choice between the most famous role in British science fiction and a clumsy detective with a battered satchel, fate handed him the satchel. He was not the only one on that set carrying a second career. His co-star was, at the same time, the lead of a sitcom that has been running since 2006. The woman living 2 television lives. Martha Lloyd is the warm, endlessly patient heart of Beyond Paradise. She is played by Sally Bretton, and to millions of comedy viewers, she is instantly recognizable as somebody else entirely. Lucy, opposite Lee Mack in Not Going Out. For years, Bretton led a genuine television double life. On one channel, she was sparring with one of the fastest comedians in Britain in front of a studio audience. On another, she was running a Devon guest house and navigating an occasionally chaotic life with Humphrey Goodman. Two hit series at once, in completely different registers, a workload almost nobody in British television carries. Not Going Out is no small commitment. It is one of the longest-running live-action sitcoms the BBC has ever broadcast. Anne Breton has been at its center for nearly the whole journey. Flatmate, then wife, then the increasingly exasperated matriarch of the show's household. Her history with Humphrey also predates the spin-off. Breton first appeared as Martha in Death in Paradise itself, as the woman who gave the island's most accident-prone detective a reason to smile and then a reason to leave. When Beyond Paradise was commissioned, there was never a serious question of recasting. She was half the reason the audience wanted more. The publicity has always centered on Marshall, but the series only functions because Martha is as fully drawn as Humphrey, and because Breton plays her with the timing of a woman who spent 2 decades holding her own against Lee Mack. The town they live in has a problem of its own. It does not exist, and the place standing in for it is roughly 40 miles outside the county it claims. The county that isn't. Beyond Paradise is set in Shipton Abbot, a fictional market town in Devon. The town where it is actually filmed sits in a different county altogether. That town is Looe, on the south coast of Cornwall, whose harbor, bridge, and steep narrow streets appear in almost every episode. The sleight of hand was noticed at once by the Cornish, who took gentle exception to their town being passed off as the county next door. The Devon versus Cornwall of it all became a running joke in coverage of the show. Cornwall provides the scenery, Devon gets the credit. Filming in a working harbor town brings its own complications. Tides, weather, and holiday crowds all have opinions about television schedules. The production shares its streets with fishing boats and day trippers rather than working on a closed studio lot. That is part of why the place on screen feels genuinely lived in rather than dressed. For Looe, the arrangement has been widely described as transformative. The town is reported to have seen a real tourism lift from the series, with visitors arriving to find the police station, the harbor, and the streets they know from Friday nights. A seaside economy handed a year-round advertisement on BBC One. Eagle-eyed viewers spot the joins anyway. Landmarks and shopfronts familiar from Cornish holidays keep appearing under Devonian names, and pointing them out has become a spectator sport among the show's audience. It also places Beyond Paradise in a grand British tradition. The geography of beloved television is almost never what it claims. Doc Martin's Portwen is really Port Isaac. Midsummer's villages are scattered across counties that have nothing to do with each other. And Devon's coziest crime hotspot is, and always has been, Cornish. The fake town has one more trick. Walk into its police station and you are standing among 40 years of British comedy. The station full of comedy legends. Look closely at Shipton Abbot Police Station and a remarkable pedigree emerges. The station's indispensable civilian support officer, Margot Martins, is played by Felicity Montague, known to a generation as Lynn, Alan Partridge's long-suffering and endlessly loyal assistant, one of the great supporting characters in British comedy. Beside her is P.C. Kelby Hartford, played by Dylan Llewellyn, instantly recognizable to millions as James, the terrified English cousin from Derry Girls. In Beyond Paradise, he is once again the innocent abroad, the sweet local lad slowly discovering what policing actually involves. And presiding over the family side of the show is Barbara Flynn as Martha's mother, Anne, an actress with one of the most quietly distinguished careers in British television, stretching back through Cracker and A Very Peculiar Practice. Her scenes give the series both its emotional ballast and its sharpest edges. Margot herself has become a fan favorite, the immovable object of Shipton Abbot Station, fiercely territorial about her office, her procedures, and her colleagues, armed with a deadpan authority no detective inspector would dare test. Montague plays her the way she played Lynn, as a woman with no formal power who somehow runs everything. This is casting used as a secret weapon. None of these actors is treated as a comedy cameo. They are simply handed roles worthy of them. All of that talent was assembled to service a formula the show then refused to use. They threw away the murder. Death in Paradise runs on one of the most dependable engines in television. A murder in the first minute, a locked circle of suspects, a solution before bedtime. Beyond Paradise made a decision that looked, on paper, like commercial suicide. It threw the engine away. In Shipton Abbott, there is frequently no murder at all. Cases turn on missing persons, strange thefts, land disputes, old grudges and mysteries with roots deep in the town's history. The crimes are smaller. The puzzle is usually not who did it, but why anyone would bother, which often turns out stranger than a killing. It was a braver call than it looks in hindsight. The Murder of the Week structure is the franchise's proven money machine, refined across more than a decade and exported around the world. Walking away from it while carrying the franchise's own name on the poster meant betting the brand on an untested theory about why people actually watch. The theory was that audiences tune into the original, less for the bodies than for the warmth, the puzzle, and the place. The theory was right. The gentler format also bought the series something Death in Paradise can rarely afford. Continuing stories about its own characters' lives, running underneath the cases week to week. Quietly, it expanded what a cozy crime drama is allowed to be. Beyond Paradise proved a mainstream Friday night detective show does not need a corpse. It needs a community worth caring about, and a detective who cares about it more than anyone else does. Though not everyone in that community was pleased to see him arrive. One of them had been passed over so that he could. The promotion that went to the wrong person. Beyond Paradise opens on an injustice the show has never pretended away. DS Esther Williams, played by Zara Ahmadi, is the capable, experienced officer who effectively runs policing in Shipton Abbott. She watches the senior post she had every right to expect, handed instead to a charming outsider from London. Most series would have used that for a week of friction, and then quietly forgotten it. Beyond Paradise, let it breathe. Esther's frustration at Humphrey's arrival was written as entirely reasonable, because it was, and the partnership that grew between them had to be earned across whole series, rather than handed over at the end of a single case. Ahmadi plays the long game beautifully. The slow drift from resentment to respect to genuine friendship, conveyed mostly in glances across a small station office. It is the kind of understated television acting that never wins awards and quietly holds entire series together. It also gives the show a grown-up spine under the coziness. Esther is the realist to Humphrey's dreamer, the local to his incomer, the one who knows every family in town while he is still learning the road names. And then, there is her name, which is a joke the show has never once acknowledged out loud. Esther Williams was the name of one of the biggest film stars in 1940s and 50s Hollywood, a competitive swimmer turned MGM headliner. She built an entire career out of aquatic musicals, performing elaborate synchronized routines in enormous studio pools. Now, put that name on the most grounded, least glamorous, most sensibly shod police officer in the West Country. A woman whose working life involves drizzle, paperwork, and a stolen tractor. The show never nudges you. It just quietly hands its most down-to-earth character the name of the queen of the Hollywood pool, and lets the joke sit there for anyone old enough to catch it. The lightness stops, though, at Humphrey and Martha's front door. The grief under the cardigan. For all its gentle Friday night warmth, Beyond Paradise has carried one of the most delicately handled sad storylines in recent British drama. Humphrey and Martha's long, bruising attempt to become parents. The first series confronted pregnancy loss directly, a subject mainstream cozy drama has historically stepped around entirely. More importantly, it did not play it as a single tragic episode and then move on. It played it as an ongoing weight the couple carry together, shaping how they work, how they argue, how they hope, and how they comfort each other long afterwards. The response showed how rare that was. Viewers who had lived the same experience wrote about seeing it reflected honestly in a program they watched for comfort, and the storyline was widely praised for refusing both melodrama and easy resolution. The show let sadness and sweetness live in the same house. The couple's search for a family did not end there either. Later series followed it into new territory, explored with the same patience and the same refusal to rush toward a tidy answer. Few dramas this gentle have trusted their audience with this much unresolved longing. It is arguably the secret of the entire series. Beyond Paradise looks like escapism, and it is. But the escapism is anchored in a marriage tested by real grief. The lightest detective drama on television carries genuine weight in its foundations, which is precisely why the lightness works, none of which was supposed to draw the audience it drew. The launch nobody predicted. Spin-offs are television's riskiest bet. For every success, a dozen vanish within a series, dragging a little of the parent show's reputation down with them. Beyond Paradise did the opposite of vanishing. It arrived in February 2023 and was widely described as one of the biggest new drama launches British television had seen in years. The scheduling told part of the story. The series was placed on Friday evenings on BBC One, the traditional home of comfort television. In the slot the franchise had already spent a decade making its own. Friday night on BBC One is where broadcasters go looking for the audience they can rarely buy anywhere else. Households watching together in real time, week after week. The reported viewing figures ran into the millions for the opening episode, and the audience is generally described as having held across the run rather than draining away after the novelty. Whatever the exact numbers, the BBC's behavior tells you how they read them. The renewal came quickly, further series followed, and Christmas specials were added, which is the clearest signal a British broadcaster can send. Christmas Day and Boxing Day slots are not handed to shows anyone is unsure about. The audience skewed exactly where the franchise has always been strongest: older viewers, families watching together, and the enormous constituency that wants its crime solved without cruelty. It also settled an old argument. Skeptics had insisted for years that Death in Paradise only worked because of the sunshine. Beyond Paradise took the sunshine away, replaced it with drizzle and a harbor wall, and kept the audience anyway. Proof that the warmth was never coming from the weather, which leaves the biggest secret of the 10, what Humphrey Goodman accidentally built. The Accidental Empire. What began in 2011 as one detective show on a Caribbean island has quietly become something almost unique in British television, a franchise. Death in Paradise continues on St. Marie. Beyond Paradise thrives in the West Country. And Return to Paradise, a separate series entirely, has carried the formula to Australia with a detective solving crimes in a coastal town near Sydney. 3 shows, 3 continents worth of scenery. One shared DNA. The reassuring puzzle, the reluctant outsider, the community that solves itself. No other British crime drama has spun itself into a family of shows quite like this. Even the celebrated Morse universe expanded backwards and sideways, but never abroad. The parent show, meanwhile, has become an institution, passing its 100th episode and rolling on through new detectives and new eras. More than a decade after critics dismissed it as a holiday postcard with a body count, it remains among the most watched dramas in Britain. And at the center of all of it stands Humphrey Goodman, the only detective in the franchise's history to lead 2 of its shows. A character created as a mid-series replacement, the awkward new man sent in to fill another detective's shoes, who ended up becoming the connective tissue of the entire enterprise. The whole expansion traces back to one romantic decision. A detective chose love over the job, walked off the most beautiful island on television, and accidentally founded an empire in a Cornish harbor town, pretending to be in Devon. If you enjoyed this, subscribe for more deep dives into the shows you thought you already knew. And tell me in the comments which secret genuinely surprised you. The Doctor Who near miss, the Devon and Cornwall county swap, or the fact that the franchise's biggest gamble was removing the murder. Then watch the video on screen now for 10 more things you missed in Death in Paradise.